Introducing large, hairy, and humanoid inhabitants of forests and swamps of Florida. Come join our host, Reverend Jeff, for a modern look at the Bigfoot sightings of Volusia County, Florida. Does that one still lurk near the beach? Find out tonight, along with a new quasi theory and more of this week's news. It's ramping up to be a fantastic show. And it all starts right here on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. And now, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
I think that might have been my fault, but I'm not really sure. Hey, this is the Squatchers Lounge podcast, and I am indeed your host to all this mess, the Reverend Jeff Kelly, and I'm here, you're there. That makes all of this pretty friggin' awesome. That's right, we're going to talk about Bigfoot once again, but this time we're talking about Volusia County. That's right, Daytona Beach. Bigfoot can't possibly be close to Daytona Beach, can he? Well, in all reality, I'd say Bigfoot's probably about 4 outside of standing on A1A at beachfront. All used to talk about, and we're going to talk about that tonight. But wait, there's more. As usual, we are going to talk about the news. There was a bunch of strange things going on, and there's a friggin' spider microphone. Ah, what the flying crap! This thing has to go away. Okay. All right, there. That look at him burn down the house. Seriously, God, I hate spiders. Holy crap! Whew. Nothing worse than just seeing a friggin' spider like inches from my eyeball. What the? Okay. Getting back to the show now that I've about had a freak out and a panic here at the start of it. Try and share this once more, and we'll see if we can't get it going. Sorry, folks. If I sounded like I was panicked, I was. Hey, scientists have captured performing a bizarre ritual. Yeah, we've talked about this kind of stuff before on the podcast. Basically, chimpanzees in 3 West African countries of Guinea, Bissau, and Liberia taking part in strange behavior. They store a great number of rocks in the house. Then usually a male takes one of those rocks, walks a distance away, grunts an utterance, and tree, leaving a mark on it. The rock is then placed back in the hollow to be reused later in a manner again. And that's where the whole pamp hoot mask of the show is, it's like some strange reason, whether it's marking its territory or it's a territorial thing, whatever's going on, there's no reason for it to be doing this. No chimps east of these countries have been observed doing it. And what's more, it seems to be there's no reason that it's tied to survival. It has nothing to do with acquiring food, mating, or furthering one's status. So shit is happening to the chimpanzees. Pretty soon his name is Caesar. His eyes are going to start to turn white, and we'll all get to go play with Bad Ape. No, I've seen War of the Apes. Have you? Moving right along here. Bizarre bipedal creature captured in Japan? No. Even close. Bipedal creature. A velvet, maybe? It looks like most of the mystery can be solved that way. Inside to be fur coat. Where the fur coat come from, I don't know, but it looks like it has human lips. I mean, it literally looks like Mick Jagger in a fur coat with monkey eyes. Socks. Moving right along. We wasted on that coast to coast crap. That's right. Or swims viciously attacked by an alligator. Ate the toes off a Florida man who bathed in a pond. That's right. Be careful what you wish for. A homeless man was attacked by an alligator while he was bathing in a Florida retention pond Monday. A 9-foot alligator attacked a man around 10 a.m. in Port Charlotte, located south of Tampa. Life Conservation Commission identified the victim as 68-year-old Frederick Iman. Poor dude. Homeless. He sustained a left foot and leg and groin. Wow, dude, seriously, don't. And every bit of fresh water in Florida has an alligator in it. Okay, officials over at the Lincoln County, Missouri, saying, careful, keep your pets inside for immediate release. Oh my goodness, the Mo thing is back. Even big piles of crap. No, not really. Apparently, there's some controversy over the picture of the crap. Will Jevning is actually claiming ownership to the crap picture, and that it was taken in Northern California, not in Missouri or what's Montana? I don't know. Montana, maybe. Yeah. Anyhow, in this toad-looking thing here, I have no idea what's going on there. But for the most part, yeah, not really. This is probably more like that Round Rock crap we saw just a few months ago. Matt Moneymaker released this picture of a real Sasquatch in Washington for everybody to see. An elk hunter witnesses at a recent Colorado town hall says he saw one almost identical. Except that thing's only like 4 foot tall. And it's not a Bigfoot. I would venture to say it's his cousin, burned out stump squatch. Probably a lightning strike or something similar. That thing isn't very tall off the ground. If you look at the way the vegetation grows up around it, whatever that is standing there is 4, maybe 5 feet tall, and maybe 1.5 feet wide. Pretty much going to end up being a stump. But Matt, hey man, thanks for sharing real Sasquatch with us. Maybe we're looking for the wrong thing. Maybe Johnson's got it right, and we just are not taking pictures of the Sasquatch we see because they look like stumps. They cloak into a stump squatch. Sure. Gene study suggests the Homo sapiens migrated into Africa and not out of the continent. What? Interbreeding with a local hominins 150,000 years ago. Yeah, Dean talks about this a lot. A protein found in the saliva samples of sub-Saharan Africans offers evidence that strongly contradicts the theory for human origins. Scientists from the University of Buffalo stumbled on the genetic marker for an unknown African interbreeding event, researching the evolution of an important mucin protein called MC7. And this is going to happen more and more as the genetic samples become easier and easier to process and our machines advance further and further. We're going to find all this in our genes that are going to the picture for where we all came from. Is the out of Africa theory? Is the into Africa plot? I haven't really seen a whole lot about where they would have originated from. We don't have a whole lot of early species find outside of the African continent, but I'd like time will tell. Who knows? But we do know that we spread like a virus and we destroy. So yay, humans. There's also new clues, species of ancient human in Africa, and that was exactly what we were kind of just talking about, where interbreeding between early hominid species was the norm. And of course, as we talked about Paranthropus last week being, there were all of these upright thinking, moving, probably using fire, probably burying their dead or at least disposing of them in caves. Paranthropi or Paranthropus type of pansy-like, beings. I don't know what else to call them. I can't really call them people because homos are really the only ones that became people, but they're definitely all of these things that are out there. And of course they would be able to breed together, just like we're finding the closer human species were able to breed together, but we're not where we were able to breed alongside those paranthropus types that probably existed, that the homos existed. In some cases, we know they did. Going horse tonight, something awful. Okay, last story of the night. Monkeys could talk, but they don't have the brains for it. We always thought that our vocal cords were special, and that was one of the things that made us human, was the ability to speak and learn languages and teach others that language, because language was something that was created. It's not something that evolved. Are unquestionably clever. Monkeys can learn how to use money, and chimpanzees have a knack for game theory, but no one has ever taught a non-human primate to say hello or garlic, as we heard last week on Bigfoot campfire stories from old Fox the Bigfoot. Scientists have long been intrigued by the failure of primates to talk like us. Understanding the reasons may offer clues into how our own ancestors evolved full-blown speech, one of our most powerful adaptations. Well, apparently Friday, a team of researchers reported that monkeys have a vocal tract capable of human speech. They argue that other primates can talk because they can't talk because they lack the right wiring in their brains. Vocal tract would be perfectly adequate to produce hundreds, thousands of words, said W. Fitch, a cognitive scientist at the University of Vienna and co-author of the new study. So careful. We very well end up with Caesar if you make him too smart. Look at that glorious monkey. Isn't he just so happy, Mr. Macaque? Rawr. Anyhow, that's going to wrap it up for this week's edition of Podcast News. And speaking of things that are getting wrapped up, a very strange occurrence has happened in the force. Been a disturbance in the force, and we don't know what happened. Apparently, our quasi-theorist Dean wrote and recorded on orbs sometime last season. It's been sitting in a folder since season 4, episode 37, I believe, is where we actually found it. And before it, the show after it, and it just seems to have never been played. For some reason, it got left out. So here, after all those months, is that missing quasi-theory on orbs from Mr. Dean Cooper. And now, quasi-theories from a quasi-scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
I feel like I'm going blind or all about orbs. Okay, not really blind, but you try looking at pictures of so-called orbs for half an hour or so and not get bleary-eyed. Orbs and Sasquatch, orbs and aliens, orbs and ghosts, orbs and nature spirits, orbs. You don't see them much with your eyeballs, but they show up in your pictures. Nobody much reported them showing up in photos until digital cameras got cheap and abundant. People, orbs are backscattered light from your digital camera's flash. They happen especially when the flash is close to the lens, as in cheap digital cameras and your cell phone. Flash bounces off small things floating in the air near your camera's lens. Things like dust particles, tiny water droplets, even small insects with glossy wings. It doesn't even have to be light from a camera flash. If you have a light on your video camera, infrared light on your infrared video cam, even ambient light from a fire or pass, that light can bounce off dust and give you a moving orb. Technically, the reflected light passes through your camera's lens and creates what is called an Airy disk, named after George Biddle Airy. Airy wrote the technical analysis that causes the Airy disk effect back in 1835. They are caused by internal refraction in a lens of light of a point source. If your light source is sufficiently tiny and uniform, light in the center of the disk, with several concentric circles of light expanding around it. Airy disks were first observed observed in early telescopes when astronomers were looking at individual stars. How fondly I recall the many hours I spent using the airy disk effect to align the lenses in my old catadioptric telescope. You knew you got it right when the star was smack dab in the middle of the airy disks. Now, why don't all those orbs and all those pictures, if the orbs are airy disks, show a little point of light with rings around it? That's because dust, bugs, and what all aren't perfect little reflectors, aren't perfect little point sources of light. Also, your cheap camera lens probably sucks and has flaws in it, especially if it's on your cell phone. On the other hand, if you see orbs floating around with your eyeballs, and they don't up in your pictures, you don't have airy disks. What you got is spooks. Run fast. This has been Dean Cooper, quasi-scientist, enlightening you with my quasi-theory of the week. You may read the text of this on my blog at bydean.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
Yes, that's right, folks. The Max Headroom edition of the Squatchers Lounge podcast tonight. I have no idea what's going on with the audio. It is not my fault. It is just what's going out over the air, and I do apologize for it. Sometimes I ain't got no control over shit. It just happens. Speaking of stuff I don't have any control over, it's time for a camping tips from Stupid from that great channel, Gone Camping. That's right. Go out there, subscribe it, like to it, do all that good stuff, share it, because of stuff like this.
Camping tips for stupids. Tip 4. The sun god Ra is in full swing of things. The summer season is upon you all, and only strong will survive on to breed. So if you hate the hot weather as much as I do, here are a few tips and tricks on how to survive out there in the heat. Get a fucking hat. I did. Baseball caps are for baseball. Real hats have the brim go all the way around your melon head. You know why? Because I hate sunburns on my neck as well as my face. So I get a hat that shades all sides of my damn head. And make sure it's for hot weather with the ventilated top. Number 2. Sunscreen works. I can attest. Screen blocks the ultraviolet light and radiation that causes sunburning. And mutations, I think. So yeah, use it. Number 3, move slower in the heat. The more your core body temperature rises. So slow it down, you speed freaks. Number 4, move into a deep cave during the afternoon hours of the day. A lot of fish, goblins, and hobbitses that all fall down into your lair. That way you can avoid the worst heat of the day and be fresh and ready to follow them nasty hobbitses in the night. All in all, have a wonderful summer, guys. Stay in the shade when you can, and remember to wear a hat. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids. Remember to stay and neuter your idiot population.
Camping Tips for Stupids from that fantastic channel. And sorry, I know, I wish, I hope in the replay it's better. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It just is out of my control tonight. Speaking of things that are not out of my control tonight, is the people who are out there in internet lands who I need to say hello to y'all. Hello to everybody out there in internet lands. No, that's not how that works. We're going to see who's hanging out live with us tonight. Look at that. Miss Natalie Smith has finally made it to not falling asleep before shout outs. That's fantastic. Starshine's hanging out there playing with her tool. That's right. She's swinging that tool, making everybody happy. We got Gary and Whitney. That's right. White, they're hanging out there. Hanging out with everybody in the chat room. Sorry. Dean Cooper, our quasi-theorist, of course, sir. He's there. Jevin Moore behind John Camping. Yeah, I know. I fail, but that's why you put that stuff up on your website, too. You're Hobo Man 5, along with Mr. Lance Windsor. How are y'all doing tonight? Rod Dupree, he's always in the place to be. That's right. Gin! Mr. Ginn is in the house. I always get that all over my mic. I got to make sure that there isn't another spider on that thing because they would have to die. Let's see here. Wyatt Ola, how you doing as well? You're hanging out with us. Timothy McCune, Hillbilly Tim's back again. That's great. Brown Dwarf's in the house. Jonathan Dowdy, glad you are with us as well. Let's see here. I thought I saw some other people. Yeti's uncle. They're flashing their thing up there, as well as Jeremy Harrison. How you doing? Let's see. Asderlin Drake. Glad you're with us as well. I know there's more people than this out there. Of course, Squatch Box and Christopher. I'm sure they're out there listening somewhere. Aaron, how you doing there, pal? Glad you're with us as well. Keith Harden, Sam Squanch, Rivera, Candy Apple. Wow, just jacking it up. Justin McNeil. Let's see who else is floating around up there. If you haven't said hi, I don't know you're here. Keith Harden as well. I probably said some of these names twice, but that's because, I medicate a lot before the show. It happens. I don't want to miss anybody, so I'm scrolling all the way to the top. So you have moments yet to leave me a comment down below before I get back to the show. That's for sure. That looks like everybody who was up in here earlier on. Let's see, any last minute hellos down here in the bottom before I get there. I thought I saw a weird name in there, but I guess I would be wrong. That Yeti's uncle, boy, that's a strange looking name. Is anybody here at the bottom that I missed? I think that's everybody. Well, there we have it. Boy, my throat is just getting to the end of the river. Okay, let's get down to it before my voice goes away. We are talking about Volusia County Bigfoot tonight. Be by the beach? Well, we're going to find out for you tonight, right here. I lived for a very long time in and around Volusia County. It is backed up right to the Ocala National Forest. As a matter of fact, the National Forest actually extends partially into Volusia County. So let's see what kind of stories we get officially from that place. We go back to the year of 1985, long before Bigfoot became Ormond Beach. Look for that just above Daytona. Right there at Beach Street or Route 1. On a Sunday afternoon, a realtor in Ormond Beach was on North and Beach Street, turned and left and entered the village of Pine Run. Before reaching the area of houses, I spotted what looked like a young preteen holding a tall stick vertically. Suddenly, the other than human walked on hands and feet to the middle of the road. My realtor slammed on the brakes and cried, "What is that?" I suggested a bear, but the shape in the head was definitely not a bear. We agreed it was not a monkey due to no long tail, and it appeared to be 4.5 to 5 foot tall. Peered directly into the woods behind us. Names were omitted for privacy, but they did actually contact the person and did a follow-up on it. Sometime later. It was reported in 2013, but the incident happened in 1985. Wow. Okay. Spring 1989, Volusia County, Florida, near Maytown Road. ape-like humanoid standing in the middle of a dirt road at approximately 3:30 a.m. A creature was sighted in the headlights of a witness's pickup truck. As the witnesses stopped, began to approach them. The creature was closely observed in the headlights and confirmed to or any other type of known animal. Witnesses reported a sickening odor that smelled like cabbage. The smell was so overwhelming that one of the witnesses began to gag. This report was never reported to the authorities or the media. This information was first made available from a researcher in 1995. Process of delivering early morning newspapers. That's why they were out and about. Move up in time just a little bit to the year 2001, June. They were driving the area of the beach southward towards the wildlife preserve in New Smyrna Beach. Now, New Smyrna Beach is across the inlet from Daytona Beach to the south there, and there is a lot of wild spaces that still kind of back up to that. My wife and I were standing on the boardwalk on a bright moonlit night at about 11:30 p.m. I was looking north when I first saw it about 100 yards. At first, I thought it was just a late night jogger. After it got about 50 yards closer, I alerted my wife to turn around because I realized that that was not your average jogger. It was a smooth, long stride with arms swinging about 2 feet in front of it. It was a uniform, solid black or brown, shadowy in color, no light face, hands, or shoes. Watched it walk south right to the edge of the surf southward until it disappeared down the beach. And I'm quite sure that it saw us yelling or encountering it, but that thought lasted just for 2 seconds. This thing was walking fast with a deliberate stride and a slight. It was on a mission, as it were. And, you know, that particular area where he's talking about, south of that is a nature preserve and has been for a very long time. Turtle Mound is down there. There's a couple of Indian mounds that are down there that were Seminole burial grounds. There's a whole bunch of territory back in there that is just, people go back there, but I mean, for the most part, you don't walk around the swamps back in there because the damn alligators eat you. It's just like the poor fellow that lost his toes earlier tonight. So still living in a place like that, like we talked about, it could literally take 150 to 200 years for just 15 animals to get in trouble. So, you know, you think about that in the long run, absolutely. We could have been crowding these animals in there all this time. 2005, spring, May time. The location was from US 1 head to Wilmette, and after a small rightward bend, you'll see an apartment complex called Willow Pond on the right. It was in Ormond Beach. Once again, US 1 in Wilmette. My friend and I were spotting gators one night in Ormond Beach, and when we had an encounter with something, well, unknown. We were near the lake when we heard something large in the woods behind us. We shined our lights into the woods to see what was making the noises, and a series of blunt beating noises, about 1 second to 2 seconds apart. Had a wood baseball bat hitting a tree. This went on from about 30 seconds to a minute before the tree fell. As we heard the crackling of the falling tree, we ran back towards the nearest safe place to us. At the same time, we heard something almost stalking our every move. Once we got to civilization and realized we were out of danger, we decided to go back to find out the source of what happened. When we returned almost an hour later, we found a tree freshly broken in half, the break being about 8 feet from the ground. The break was not clean cut like that of a hatchet. Rather, the tree had been bent to its breaking point. We knew this was a fresh break from the dripping sap, which the next day was dry, so we definitely knew the source of the knocking falling tree. On a branch about 7 feet from the ground, we found a hair sample. The hair is still yet to be identified. The best description we can give is that it is a 2 to 2.5 inch light brown hair, which is wavy with a kink close to the middle of it. The tree was about 25 to 30 feet tall. Wow, scary stuff. I've experienced a couple of trees that had the spine broken in them, and it was very, very strange to witness something that you couldn't explain what did that to a big tree. I mean, it was a 20-foot tree. 2011 October, again close to the town of Pearson, near County Highway 3, and then go to 9 Mile Point Road. Buddy, we're out in the woods hunting in Pearson, Florida on 9 Mile Road. We were driving out, and I noticed something big and brown in the ditch on the side of the road, crouching down. Then it stood up and walked back and forth across the road, then crouching back down. We know for a fact it wasn't human. It was about 9 feet tall. That the hunters a lot of the times will experience these things, and they're quick glances, they're quick encounters, but they know what they're hunting. They know that's not a bear, and they know that's not a person. So what the hell actually is it? Well, it's a Sasquatch. And the last one for the evening: possible sighting and footprints found by father and son while setting turtle lines outside of Deltona. Now, I actually lived in the town of Deltona, close to DeBerry, right where they're actually talking about, and I can tell you for sure that was there before humans moved into that area. There's no reason that they couldn't still be there, because there was plenty of wild territory to be used by them if they were just trying to survive. The story tells us by the power lines in DeBerry near the Twin Lakes. I was out in the woods with two of my sons, 16 and 18. As we were leaving, I saw some movement. I didn't think much of it. As we got up to the trail, but one of my sons noticed some footprints that were larger than normal and right next to some deer tracks. Then my other son described exactly what I saw, even though I never described what I saw. Earlier in the day, we saw a strange footprint in the mud as well. And you really can't go into the wilds of some of these, little towns and not run into a pond or a lake or a sinkhole filled with water that, the deer drink out of it. Everything else drinks out of it. Why wouldn't the Sasquatch be able to drink out of it? Of course, they would be able to as well. So if we actually take a look, as we like to do here on the show, at the map, take it over to the satellite and actually look at what this area looks like. It's the yellow urban zone, like it wants to tell us. Over from this. There it is. Everything's a little slow tonight on the Squatchers Lounge podcast. Where we're talking about is this giant area right here, and that includes the Ocala National Forest, and a lot of talking about has literally just been infected by humans. You can see there are just tons between these little cities where state forests exist and wildlife preserves exist. And literally, here's the Canaveral seashore that I was talking about earlier. Here's New Smyrna Beach when you walk south into the National Seashore. There's all of this area down in that literally these animals could surviving in, to eat shellfish, to eat fish, to eat. All these lakes are filled with brim and bass and catfish, and I mean, list the amount of food that is actually Lake Monroe, St. John's River, which is the only river that actually flows north in the North American continent to Jacksonville. Has a whole lot of wild areas behind it, and all of that backs up to the Seminole State Forest, as well as moves directly into the Ocala National Forest. And that square in the middle is actually the bombing range. Imagine that. There's a bombing range in the middle of all of that. So there's a real look at what Florida, that Volusia County, Florida actually exists of. And as you can tell, there's a lot of wild land there. I mean, the people are really concentrated in places. Yeah, the rest of it's swamp, man. Nobody wants to live there. Well, at least that's what the Seminoles decided. Hey, let's build a theme park. That sounds like a good idea. Let's drain the swamp. And so they did. Anyhow, that's going to wrap it up for this discussion of Volusia County Sasquatch. Remember, just because it's urban territory doesn't mean that there aren't Bigfoot still there, because my theory is that there've always been Bigfoot there. We just came and invaded their space too. And with that, we're going to talk about tonight's story. This is actually very first volume 3, episode 1, Bigfoot campfire story, and it literally has been like the least watched ever, and I don't understand why. So I'd like you guys to listen to it and then give me some feedback as to why nobody enjoyed this one, because for me, I really enjoyed putting this one together, and I just couldn't figure it out. So thanks so much for being here at the Squatchers Lounge podcast. We'll see you next week, where we're going to have special guest Alejandro Dominguez, the Dead Explorer, will be in to talk about Texas Bigfoot, because that's where he's from, and he's got a big announcement as well. So we always like hanging out with paranormal peeps when we get the chance. So we'll have our first guest of the year. Yeah, I know, it's like friggin' August and you're just getting a guest. Well, it happens like that. I had to get a feel for things. Now we have it. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff. Be with you. You guys hear that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that's a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. A Bigfoot captured in the Pacific Northwest had been held in captivity for nearly 30 years by the Carnival of the Damned as part of their freak show. Half man, half creature, and all real terror, it fit right in until the last night it had ever been seen in its cage. Let's hear that story. Hi, my name's Timmy, and as a young boy I enjoyed traveling. Each summer my parents would send me back east to Virginia to stay with my grandparents while my parents worked. I really loved my Nana. She always knew how to just keep me happy. I had been in town for about a week when Nana came home from the market, and she presented me with a pair of tickets to the newly arrived carnival. I was super excited about it, as I loved exotic animals, from lions and tigers to monkeys and chimps. It was all advertised on the ticket, and I couldn't wait for Saturday to get here. The days seemed to stretch on. Well, I kept hearing from others who had been to the show how amazing the big cat show was, and even some sort of story that they kept calling a wood booger. I even heard a couple of the local boys arguing if it was even real, or it must be a fake. After all of this, I was about to burst, and then finally, the day arrived. Nana woke me up early, as she had some things to do before we could go to the carnival this evening. Out we went, doing our usual visits to neighbors and others who couldn't get out for themselves. I couldn't help but be a bit selfish and just stare at the clock most of the day. And then it happened. Nana turned to me and said, "Let's go get ready for the show." So home we went while she got all changed and dressed up. She looked amazing in her polka dot dress and hat. Nana always had class. And then I stood there in front of her in my brown tweed suit, just as proud as I could be, holding my brown bolo hat. Just then, Granddad looks over and woof whistles and wishes us the best on our adventure, as he wasn't into people, that much he said. I was in amazement with all the sights and sounds as we arrived. This was the year I discovered my hatred of clowns. Not so much of fear, mind you, but an overburdening need to beat them in the face with a bat. Anyways, we walked past the big cats and watched the one-ring show, then browsed all through all of the midway, and that's when I heard it. Come one, come all, and see what only a few can stomach, one of the scariest creatures on earth. Step right up and see the half-man Sasquatch of the Pacific Northwest. Just 15 cents a person. Step right up. Well, I couldn't resist the look at Nana, as she kind of cringed with the thought of it, but into her purse she dug, and off to the Barker to buy 2 tickets we went. Hello there, young man, said the Barker with his greasy hair and matching greasy mustache. We're glad you could join us, but are you sure your lovely lady is ready to see such horrors as these? Well, Nana spoke right up for herself, as she had seen the horrors of battle in the Great War, and surely this couldn't match any of that. He looked my way and smiled some knowing smile and pointed towards the old decaying red and yellow striped tent. Once through the flaps and around a blind corner, we were herded along with the others into row after row of folding chairs facing a stage. Inside, there were just a few folks, like the man in the moth-ridden brown suit and the motorcycle hood and the leather jacket. Well, Nana led me to the seats towards the exit, and we sat there and waited for the show. It wasn't but a few minutes past when the Barker returned, this time in a bright and red shabby of an overcoat and top hat, smoking a cigar and laughing at his own jokes. But with the wave of his hand, the music stopped and the lights went dim, and he began to warn us of what we were about to see. Lady and gentlemen, you have come here of your own free will to see the freak that is the half-man, half-creature known as Sasquatch by the Chehalis Indians, or Sasquatch to you and I. I, too, didn't believe the creature until I saw it firsthand, just like you brave people are about to. Just remember, keep your voices down, don't make any sudden movements, and we'll all make it safely out together. Now please form a line to the door at my left and prepare yourself for the horror that is Sasquatch. With excitement building, I grabbed Nana by the hand and pulled her so we could be first in line to see the creature. As the rest of the room got in line behind us, the Barker came down before us and stood in front of the door. He knocked 3 times, then 2, and then the door slowly opened, and he stepped inside. He stepped aside and let us all by. I looked in the cage, but I couldn't see a thing. Others pushed past us and yelled at the Barker, "Hey, is this some kind of a scam? There's no creature in here." The Barker pushed past us all to stare at the now empty cage with the side door open and a panicked look upon his face. Just then, silence fell upon the room as we heard a low, deep, guttural growl from the darkened corner of the room of the tent. The Barker froze and began to back up slowly towards the doors. Just then, the creature came forth into the light. It stood some 7 foot tall, must have been 500 pounds, great big ridges over its eyes that shadowed them from the light, making the details harder to see. Covered in hair from head to toe, it stood before us, heaving and now panting in what seemed like aggravated panic. It began to pace back and forth, and then stopped and screamed a blood-curdling roar that made us all turn and run from the tent. Nana was frozen in place, but a quick tug towards the exit's direction, she quickly fled with me. Others trampling over people who had fallen. I looked back just in time to see the Sasquatch snatch the Barker by the arm and thrash him to the ground until he moved no more, then tore through the back end of the tent and fled into the woods. We rushed back to the car and avoided near collision after near collision all the way back out. And before we knew it, we'd actually arrived back to her house. Granddad met us at the door. He had heard on the radio that there was some sort of emergency at the carnival, and he was relieved that we were home. We sat down while they had coffee and tried to explain what had happened. But it wasn't until he heard it on the news report on the radio that they were actually looking for an escaped animal from the show. He started to believe. For weeks, it seemed there were reports of people seeing it almost nightly, until finally, it just stopped. Although there's been mysterious cases of missing persons around the carnival until it finally closed a few years later. But I suppose those are tales for another time. I'm Reverend Jeff, and may the Squatch be with you.